Welcome to the Sunday morning worship service of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church in Naperville, Illinois. I am Bridget Coleman, a member of your Board of Trustees. We're so glad you're here, whether you're present in the sanctuary this morning or watching remotely. It is so good to be together. We welcome you to our church and invite you to get to know us better after the service. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another on our spiritual and religious journeys while holding ourselves in covenant through our shared 7 principles. The mission of DuPage UU Church is to gather as an inclusive community to grow in character, mind, and spirit, and to transform the world toward fairness, love, and compassion. Whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, wherever you are in the world, you are welcome here. We have one announcement this morning. Protapis Associates consultants have been busy gathering information from member interviews and leadership focus groups regarding our capital campaign feasibility study. This week, the Protapis team will send a survey to all who have not yet had an opportunity to provide feedback. We need to hear from you. Look for an email August 22nd or 23rd, and please submit your survey responses to help us understand DuPage UU Church's readiness to move forward in tangible and meaningful ways for our beloved community. And now, if you are online, we invite you to greet each other through the chat, and if you are present here, I invite you to turn to someone you did not come with and greet them with a wave and a good morning greeting.
Joe lights this chalice today for our 6th Unitarian Universalist principle. We believe in the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Welcome to this place of love, this place of communal flourishing. We enter this worship space to open our hearts, to expand our minds, and to see the sacred within each other. Come, let us worship together.
Please rise in body or spirit and join us in hymn number 6 in the gray hymnals, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Good morning. Please join me in reciting our covenant. We come together to affirm our relationship with one another and our shared commitment to our Unitarian Universalist principles and to our DuPage Unitarian community. We recognize our agency and our connected power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous in relationship with each other so that we might transform ourselves and the world.
Our vision of beloved community is rooted in the relationships we have with each other, creation, and our world. Each week we share our joys and concerns. Today's flowers were given by Bob Smallwood and Nancy Fleming in honor of their 6th wedding anniversary. Congratulations, Bob and Nancy. And that is all I have for spoken joys and sorrows. But that doesn't mean that we do not hold them in our hearts. Whether spoken or unspoken, know that your community is here to carry you through your joy and through your sorrow and through your concern. We are here to care for each other. Please join me in a moment of prayer. This particular prayer comes from the Catholic tradition. I love the words of it. Please receive it in a spirit of grace. Spirit of justice, break open our hearts. Break them wide open. Let anger pour through like strong storms, cleansing us of our complacency. Let courage pour through like spring storms, flooding out fear. Let zeal pour through like blazing summer sun, filling us with passion. Force of justice, grant me anger at what is, courage to do what must be done, and passion to break down the walls of injustice. To build a land flowing with milk and honey for God's beloved, God's special one, God's poor ones. Spirit of justice, break open our hearts.
It is time to gather. I'm going to share a story about Martha and Waitstill Sharp. So this is a story of how a boy found out that his Unitarian Universalist grandmother and grandfather were heroes. As an 8th grader in New York City, a boy named Artemis Jakowski III chose his grandmother to interview for a school assignment. His grandmother was named Martha Sharp. Now, telling his grandparents' story is a way to pass along the question that Martha Sharp posed to Artemis throughout his life. What are you going to do that is important in your life? So, on a snowy night in Prague in 1939, Martha Sharp jumped from a taxi, darted around a corner, and flattened herself into a doorway. In the heels of a pursuing yes. Sometimes words just don't come to you. So they pursued, an agent pursued and clicked past her. She entered an unlit apartment building, dashed up 5 flights of stairs, and rang the bell of a known anti-Nazi leader. 6 weeks earlier, Martha and her husband, the Reverend Waitstill Sharp, had left their young children safely behind in the United States so they could volunteer for a relief effort in Czechoslovakia. See, I can say Czechoslovakia. And it was sponsored by the American Unitarian Association. Then one night in 1939, the Nazi army marched into Prague, the capital of Czechoslovakia, and occupied the city. The helping mission of the Sharps instantly changed into a treacherous cloak and dagger mission. That March night, a woman opened the apartment door to Martha, denying that she had ever heard of the man that Martha was asking for. I begged, Martha recounted the story later to a biographer. I told her that there was little time, and I produced my American passport, and when she saw it, she said in Czech, "A moment," and then snatched my passport from me and shut the door in my face. For the next few minutes, Martha frantically worried whether she'd see her passport again. Her passport was her only ticket to safety. But the door did open, and this time a man stood before her. And Martha asked if he was Mr. X, as Martha later referred to him when she told the story. And he said that he could give Mr. X a message. So she explained that she had been charged by a group of British and American refugee workers with transporting him to the British embassy so he could be smuggled from the country. The man asked her to wait a moment, and he disappeared into the apartment. And then he opened the door again, wearing an overcoat, and he handed Martha her passport and said, "I am Mr. X." Together, they walked through wind and snow across the city. A Nazi soldier stopped them when they reached a bridge over the Vltava River. And Martha produced her passport and confidently announced, "Americans!" And they were waved across the bridge, and then stopped by another soldier on the other side. And the passport trick worked again. Just steps outside the British embassy, a third officer stopped them. And Martha began to loudly complain about the lack of taxis and her frustration at being late for a meeting with the embassy secretary. She flashed her passport and demanded the guard tell the secretary, "Mr. and Mrs. Sharp are here." And he waved them ahead to speak with a British guard. And Martha and Mr. X walked into the embassy to safety. Martha then returned to her apartment, where Waitstill was returning from a similar mission, and they watched out their window as Nazi soldiers looted Prague stores and warehouses. The rescue of Mr. X is one of hundreds that the couple orchestrated, helping Jews and non-Jews, intellectuals, political leaders, writers, artists, and children flee to safety from the Nazis. Yet the heroism of Martha and Waitstill Sharp is just beginning to be recognized. The story of the Sharps' courage illuminates some of the dilemmas that perplex people who care about social justice. How many of us want to help but are afraid or don't know how? Taking a courageous stand does not require sacrifices and heroics on the scale of the Sharps. It is easy to feel small in comparison to Waitstill and Martha Sharp, says the Reverend Dr. Schultz. Not every one of us can set out for war-torn Europe, but every one of us can help those who do. The Sharps soon after helped found the Unitarian Service Committee, which is now known as the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. And as you notice, they have a train car there with a banner across it. The Service Committee is also known for driving vehicles into villages with food and first aid. And they would use the chalice symbol to let people know that they were safe. And that's where the chalice symbol became the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. They personally would distribute milk to war-torn villages in France and Portugal, along with medical aid. So in sharing his grandparents' experience, Artemis Joukowsky wanted their story to inspire others, not overwhelm them. Life is made of righteous moments, not grandiose moments, he says. Making choices where you reflect on how you treat everyone in your life. The key part about my grandparents wasn't just one big moment. They made thousands of little choices that led up to the story that we now tell. Artemis remembers his grandmother, Martha Sharp, asking him, "What are you going to do that is important in your life?" Even now that he has grown up, married, and a father of 3 children, he still hears those words. As a child, Artemis Joukowsky always answered the same way: "I'm going to overcome my disease," referring to his lifelong battle with spinal muscular atrophy, a progressive illness. Today, he has become an advocate for disability rights and is the author of Rising the Bar, New Horizons in Disability Sports. He was also co-producer of the PBS series with Ken Burns about Martha and Waitstill Sharp. Telling his grandparents' story is a way to pass along to you, a new generation, the question that Martha Sharp asked him: what are you going to do that is important in your life? now sing to the children.
Giving of our treasure is how we reciprocate the many gifts we are given by this community. Your contribution supports the programs and operations of DuPage UU Church. Giving is also how we live our values in the world. Each month we share our offerings with an organization nominated by the congregation and selected by the special offering team. During August, the special offering will benefit Working Bikes, nominated by DUUC member David Gorman. Working Bikes collects 11,000 used bikes annually for reuse locally and internationally. Volunteers and employees repair 2,000 of these bikes for donation in the Chicagoland region through charitable partners for homeless individuals, immigrants, veterans, and children of low-income families. Working Bikes is an incredibly efficient and effective grassroots organization that makes great use of hundreds of volunteers and of free resources of used bikes to empower people with free or affordable transportation throughout the Chicagoland region, including DuPage County. For more information, visit their website at workingbikes.org. And this is in last night's email about the order of the service, if you don't remember it later, workingbikes.org. The morning's offering to support the work of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church and of Working Bikes is given and received in a spirit of generosity and gratitude.
reading picked out. It was a lovely reading. It was a great reading. And then I did some research on the author and found out that she had signed the same turf letter that J.K. Rowling had against trans women. And so the reading won't happen today. I was 20 when I read my first Isabel Allende book, and then I devoured the rest of her novels. Isabel Allende is a Chilean author and cousin to Salvador Allende, the first democratically elected socialist president of Chile. Salvador Allende was assassinated in 1973 by the coup leader and future dictator of the country, Augusto Pinochet. One of the many things that I love about Allende's writing is the fictional ways she explores the lives of everyday Chilean citizens and how they experienced the encroaching fascism on their lives based on the true events of her own life before and during the Pinochet era. I suspect that what she shares about the slow eating away at freedom of the Chilean people is exactly what the Germans and Jews experienced in the rise of Nazism in the German state. In subtle and not so subtle ways, the rise to power of a dictator and fascist ideology slowly begins to take over the everyday life of a citizen. There's an insidious nature to this takeover. It at once is easy to overlook for those who are not directly impacted by it, and it makes you feel powerless. Take the loss of abortion health care for those with uteruses here in America. If you do not have a uterus, it is really easy for you to ignore the impact of the loss of this basic health care right because you don't have to worry about getting pregnant. But it also makes us, those of us who have uteruses, feel completely powerless. The methods to restore Roe v. Wade are long and arduous, making it feel like it's impossible. Doesn't mean we don't protest, but it makes it very, very easy to feel defeated by such losses, thus weakening our resolve. There's another piece, though, of Allende's writing that I love. She's very clear that the first resistors to fascism are the academics. There's a reason for this. Academics have a larger, wider view of history than the common person. Take the fact that I didn't even know about the history of Chile until I read Allende's books, let alone the involvement of the US government in the takeover by Pinochet and the human rights atrocities that happened during and after. This was not part of my high school education. Was it part of yours? Raise your hand. Haha, that's what I thought. Not only are academics the first to protest, the academy as an institution is often the first to be attacked by a regime hoping to come into power, because they have to establish their own truth. An authoritarian regime must have its own truth, and it doesn't fit in with the actual truth. The limits placed upon education are the first to be implemented. And another example of this is Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian who lived this experience. As the Nazis rose to power in the 1930s Germany, he would speak about the Christian church's moral obligation to critique the state based upon not only theological imperatives such as loving your neighbor, but also understanding the broader perspective and truth of history. He would eventually go on to create an underground seminary movement and would be captured and placed in a concentration camp and eventually murdered by his captors. It's easy in cozy Naperville, Illinois, to think that we are so far away from these tragic historical events. For many of us in this congregation, we are so privileged. Even those of us who embody an identity that marginalizes us in the greater world, we have some level of privilege here. living in a sanctuary state that allows people with uteruses access to life-saving health care. It also is a sanctuary state for transgender folks. But lest we get too comfortable, let us remember the lesson of Allende's truth of subtle and slow takeaway of our freedom. In our safe space here, not only does the historical seem so far away, but even the loss of rights for many of us doesn't seem too terrible. Many of us might be thinking, it can't be so bad, can it? I want us to take a deep breath. Seriously, deep breath. Tap your feet on the floor. Remember that you are grounded here in this brave space. Look at the person next to you, because this is a person that has decided to journey with you in this moment. Because, beloveds, it is bad. The many despicable decisions by the Supreme Court and the laws passed in southern states that allow outright discrimination are just the tip of the iceberg. Our educational systems and libraries are already being attacked. As many of the teachers and librarians in this room probably can testify to you all, local conservatives here are banning books and approaching school boards as battlegrounds. In Florida, Prager University, a conservative institution, is creating educational videos for the public school systems. These videos are rewriting history and disempowering teachers. So I'm going to show you a clip from one of these videos. It's about two modern-day kids who travel back in time to visit Christopher Columbus on his boat. They're talking with him about their confusion about whether it's Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day. Check this out, Justin. That's not even the worst. The way they whitewash Frederick Douglass is tragic. Allende tells us that it begins with the academics and the academy, which includes the library. The public library that I went to as a teenager in Jamestown Township, Western Michigan, has been closed by a public vote because they had a book on being queer. The closing denies the existence of difference. It marginalizes people of all different identities, including those who just simply use the library to gain access to the internet. I've written to you all a few times over the summer, sharing some of the ways that fascism is knocking on our door. It isn't knocking, though. It's pounding, threatening us, even in our safe pocket of the Chicago western suburbs. Today, between our services, during our adult learning time, we will be watching a lecture on the tactics of fascism. If there's any doubt, I encourage you to watch it again, or check out some of the podcasts by Noam Chomsky or the American historian Heather Cox Richardson and her blog, Letters from an American. The evidence is all around us, often hiding between the news stories that tell us that the world is decadent and successful, if only we ignore the harm and look to celebrities for happiness. I get it. It is easy to want to ignore what is happening in the world. It's so overwhelming. And fascism's tactic is that it wants to isolate you and to make you feel hopeless. It wants you to feel like nothing can be done to help change things. But they don't know how wrong they are. Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists have a long, strong, and proud history of standing up for justice. We heard the story of Waite Still and Martha Sharp, and they are not the first. We have fought for abolition, for the labor movement, women's rights, civil rights, ecological rights, voting rights. Heck, the symbol of our faith was created so that we could have an official logo on our paperwork as we work to get those at risk out of Nazi-occupied Europe. Our legacy is one of resistance. Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists have a legacy of resistance because innate in our theology is the concept of freedom. Our 7 principles espouse it. It's bound up in the DNA of what it means to be Unitarian Universalist. We belong in the resistance because fascism attacks the very core of who we are as a people. When we talk about what it means to be a people of faith, we need to know what our faith stands for and what our faith is. Our faith is rooted in the belief that freedom and liberation is the way that we and the world flourish. Our resistance means watching the ways that fascism slinks its way in and then fighting for the principles that hold our Unitarian Universalism, our faith, strong. Unitarian Universalists in the resistance against injustice is as American as apple pie. The time for us to resist is now. I hope you will join me in exploring ways for us to live into our legacy of faith.
Please rise as you are willing and able and join hymn number 348, guide my feet. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain.
Resistance is our legacy. A legacy rooted in the shared vision and shared bodies here in this room and beyond that go to our Unitarian Universalist ancestors. I do hope that you will join me at 10:15 for our adult learning, and our children will be in their classes. But in the meantime, please feel free to stretch and then return here for our adult learning time. And as we go, we will be singing a very special song that was written as a protest music, and I hope that you will join me. It's a really easy one to pick up. Stand, please.
There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more fires burning, they will find their way to me. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. There are more mountains falling, they will find their way to me. There are more mountains falling, this I know, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will wade through the waters when they find their way to me. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know. I will walk through the fires when they find their way to me. I will walk through
and join us in the chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish the light of this chalice, but not the light in our hearts. Until we meet again, may the warmth of our community carry you.